Hello everybody. This talk is going to be in English. I hope that's all right. I hope Annalena is getting ready over there. Okay. So, yes, my name is Daniel and I'm going to talk a bit about Openleaks. When I prepared this talk and had a look at the conference program, I saw that the description for the panel that we're having this afternoon includes a short passage on Openleaks as well. And that passage basically is as wrong as you can get it. So I kind of thought that there still seems to be some need to actually explain what it is that we are working on. So I'll try to cover a couple of different parts here. So yes, when I started to prepare this, I thought the talk was an hour, so we're going to have to rush it a little bit. Whatever time in the end I need after half an hour, I will just copy it from Peter that's following up on me, and hopefully we will have enough time to go through the talk then completely. So there will be 4 topics that I'm going to cover in the talk. Hopefully this will give you an idea of why we are working on this project and what the status is. So I'll begin with where we are coming from. This is basically a short excerpt of the lessons learned and the basis for why we think the project we are implementing is any good at all and what the basis for it should be. Then I want to describe where actually we are headed. So what is the long-term vision of this project and what is it that we are trying to implement? And I'll try to explain how we will get there. So what do the tools look like that we are implementing at the moment? And actually, where are we at the moment? And I think this might be the most interesting part. At least I think it should be said at this point in time. We're a bit delayed. That's not a secret. People are complaining that we're not started yet. So I'd at least like to tell you where we are and why we are at this stage and not a bit further maybe. So let's begin. The basic lessons learned is, the first one is about the potential of this whole story. So what we found out in the last few years is that whistleblowing on the internet has a great potential. And there's lots of courageous people out there that have information that they would want to pass on. And that opens up a lot of potential for society. And that potential is probably needed more than ever. The world is becoming more complex. There are so many things happening in secrecy that none of us know about, that are rotting over time. And whenever they come to light, we found out we could have prevented what's happening if we just had known about it a bit earlier. Digital whistleblowing in that sense, so the whistleblowing that is happening on the internet, is much more than just Cablegate. That's what all the people that are not familiar with this topic, other than the more popular releases in the last months, have to understand. It's not just those big releases, it's actually the opposite. The real power of, or whatever this can enable, is untapped as of now. We haven't found any ways yet to address corruption in small towns, in small corporations, in local areas, all those cases where something's going on that we should bring to light, but that is just not so attractive to the world press. That is just not another world record. Secondly, there's a lot of responsibility you have to bring into such an endeavor. That is what we learned. It requires a responsible way to deal with topics, even more than the classic form of reporting. And this is basically because you are dealing with unredacted, or at least in some parts, unredacted but raw information. So it is not, there's not really an editorial process in the respect that somebody is writing a story and he's balancing that story and he's researching all the background. But if you're into publishing or providing raw materials to a wider audience, then this requires completely different guidelines after which you work and a completely different set of ethics and standards. Also, and this is very important, one of the lessons we've learned is that you need responsible behavior to dictate the rules. So the responsible behavior, the ways, the standards after you are working, those standards must be paramount. It must not be hype, fame, or myth, or whatever kind of what's happening on the internet, the buzz, some conspiracy theories, or whatever, that are influencing the way that you are working, that have a say in that. But it should actually only be a good set of responsible standards that are driving your project and that are dictating what's happening. That responsibility requires a lot of resources. This is important to understand as well. It requires having ethics and standards, and it requires having expertise and being able to scale. So if you are becoming very popular with such a project, and if whatever you do really functions well, then you will have a tremendous amount of work. And in order to address that amount of work, you need to have people that first of all know about this whole topic, that have experience in what they are doing. And in the same way, you need to be able to have enough resources to scale up to what you are trying to achieve. Those resources, and this is very important to understand, are available. It's not like such projects constantly would have to struggle trying to find resources. It's not like we don't have people that know how to deal with such material. It's not like we don't have the expertise to deal with all of that material. What we need is to tap into these resources efficiently. And that's one of these things that we are trying to implement here. We don't want to reinvent the wheels by building up the biggest media corporation or the biggest media project ever that is trying to answer all of the stuff in one project, but we're actually trying to make an efficient solution that is tapping into existing expertise and existing resources. The third lesson that we've learned is that all leaks require context. And this is really important to understand. If you just publish stuff on the internet, it doesn't matter. A few people might notice, probably a lot of people that would notice are in this room, but most others wouldn't. And this is something I hope everybody here will understand at some point in time. Even though you think that it is very important that you just get access to some site that is publishing information, it will not make much of a difference. Because you need mechanisms how you bring this content into the heart of society. And the heart of society is not the internet community, but it's people that are just watching 8 o'clock news, and maybe people that are just reading newspapers. So this requires context, and that context has to be established. And this is something that we are trying to address as good as we can, and is something where we have a focus on. If you try to establish that context, you will sooner or later find that you need existing organizations, like media organizations, like NGOs, citizen journalists as well, just whatever kind of projects that are working in a particular interest to inform the public. And this can be a lot of different projects or organizations. Now, a couple of these organizations, especially the media, they face what I call here the exclusivity dilemma. So they will only report on something if they have an exclusive scoop here. So if it is their story to break, if they are the first ones. This is the only time when they will commit a lot of resources for the research into a certain topic, for example. That's a really bad thing, and I don't like this economy at all. It's something we thought about a lot, and it's kind of appalling. But on the other hand, it can be solved. And this is one of the things that we have spent a lot of thought on. And we've developed a mechanism how we can address that exclusivity dilemma, how we can give partners working with us some kind of exclusivity while still making sure that it doesn't harm anybody, and it certainly doesn't harm the public and the information the public receives. But I'll get into that in a bit. So distribution of leaks, ideally, from our perspective, should just be a service. It should be available to as many people as possible. It should not have a political agenda. It should be just a service as other services that we have in society. Services like delivering mail or providing whatever kind of content. In such a way, we need a mechanism that can help to distribute information that is of importance to the public, but that has some kind of privacy concerns or requires specific security for its distribution. So that approach requires service neutrality. So similar to the whole net neutrality debate maybe, we think that such a service should be in a neutral position, that it should be available to everybody, and that it should be available to everybody in the same fashion. that it should not discriminate between big media corporations and an NGO that might not have any money. Another lesson, and I'll not get into this too much, that we've learned that too much power corrupts, and a lot of power, or absolute power, corrupts absolutely. So we need some kind of mechanisms to address the problem of getting too powerful when running such an endeavor. To prevent that, this requires standards again. It requires clear roles and responsibilities. It requires a definition of how you're actually going to be organized, how you are working, who is responsible for what, who has to be accountable in what kind of fashion. And it requires thinking about these topics and establishing an organization that can address that. So that requires a proper organization, and this is as well something we're working on. It's also requiring basic funding, and that's important for me to mention, because if you're planning a project like this conservatively, you don't actually need too much money. You need some money, I wouldn't deny that, and we are actually in need for more money as well. I wouldn't deny that either. But if you really engineer such a solution, it can be made affordable and sustainable. So it is not like you need infinite amounts of money coming in because you necessarily have so much legal trouble that you have to pay lots of lawyers all the time. And in the same way, you do not need, or you can find solutions to address operational costs as well. It's not that expensive. Yes, so what is it actually the way we want to go? So I'll try to sum up the aim that our project is following in that slide. So we are trying to offer a robust data submission system that can pass on information from anonymous sources to a strong and diverse community of analysts, researchers, and publishers. This is basically summing up what we are trying to do. We offer technology so anonymous sources can give their information to people that can actually deal with that information. It's similar to a digital Dropbox, and maybe for Germans that are familiar with the functioning of a baby clapper in a hospital here, it is a bit more similar to a baby clapper than it is to just a regular anonymous mailbox. The technology should provide for robust security for both our sources and the partners that we are working with. So security concerns are not just an issue for the source. Primarily they are, but they are also in times of exploits being hidden in documents, all sorts of attacks that we can see on client sides. They should also become a consideration in respect to the security of partners. So whenever you receive a document, you don't want some journalist that might not have a good antivirus software installed or that might know nothing about IT security. You don't want that person to receive a document that contains an exploit and is actually compromising a system that is handling whatever kind of confidential information, so some kind of a research laptop or whatever. So you have to make sure to some extent that these machines are not being compromised either. We're looking at this, and there's a typo in here, we're looking at this with some kind of a holistic approach. So what we are trying to build is a solution that is not just addressing putting online a website where you can upload something, but that is actually looking at these requirements in a holistic way, and that is trying to build a solution looking at the bigger picture here. So technology that we are developing should be accessible for NGOs, for the media, and for similar entities alike. So this can be all sorts of projects that are working with an interest to inform the public. That is basically the scope that we are looking at here. And we do not want to discriminate between the financial capabilities that these organizations have. So in the past, there's been some confusion about if we are trying to monetize this whole leaking business, if we are building a commercial solution here or whatever, and we are not. The services we are going to offer are going to be for free. That has always been the case, and this will be the case. What we want people to do is we want those organizations that are working with us, that have resources, that have financial flexibility, to help finance this project by contributing resources. So one of the biggest problems in such a project is the operational cost, because that is something that's coming back every month, and you have to pay the bills. So we thought about maybe shifting part of this operational cost, and this is mainly servers and infrastructure and I don't know, rack space in a data center, to shift part of that cost to the partners we are working with. So to these partners that have the possibility to cover such costs. That's actually pretty attractive from a tax perspective for the partners we are working with, because they can just write it off. It gives some legal protections to these machines as well. And it makes sure that those partners in our community that can help, they will help, and they will also help in sustaining those partners that have no money at all, like maybe some smaller NGOs or similar. So in that respect, the community of users or partners that we are building should not just be users. It shouldn't just be clients or customers or whatever that are using our technology, but it should rather become a full-fledged collaborative community where the partners in our system have possibilities to work with each other as well and to make sure that they can efficiently address the information that is coming in and make sure that it receives a lot of attention in the public. So how are we going to go about to achieve that? First of all, we are creating a community. So this will be some kind of a union of vested interests. If you look at this community, you will find out that it's a lot of entities that in some cases have conflicting business interests. That's a bit of the exclusivity problem I talked about before. So one newspaper doesn't want another newspaper to be part of the same story because they are, I don't know, they think that people won't buy the newspapers and they won't have this exclusive scoop anymore. So it's part of this whole media economy that you want to keep everybody else out of the game. And if you look at the current publications, you will find out that this is part of the problem. This is why there's only a few select newspapers that have access to the cables officially, for example, and a lot of the newspapers don't. It's because those papers that have access, they don't want anybody else to get access. And that's a problem. That's something you have to circumvent somehow. That's an issue we have to find a solution for. And that can be solved by providing basic exclusivity and, on the other hand, also providing some kind of synergy effects. So in our case, it will just plainly work that a source can give a document to a specific newspaper, and they can say, you can get that document 2 weeks exclusively. And these 2 weeks are determined by the source. So a source can give it to them for 2 weeks, and if these 2 weeks pass and the newspaper doesn't act up on it and they don't write a story or they don't publish the document, then this document will be shared within our community with all the other partners. And this dynamic will make sure that another partner will have a look, and that once a scoop is published, other partners can still do the research with a raw document. And it will also make sure that if there's a document that no one can take care of because it's legally too problematic, you will just need one project in our community that can take care of publishing all the stuff that is legally too risky for everybody else. So it is this dynamic that I want everybody to think about for a bit, because this is the basic misunderstanding I feel we're having here. This dynamic will make sure more robust than ever that information will come to the public light, and that people will get access, that all of you, all the bloggers and I don't know, citizen journalists will get access to this information and can write about it. That you can still check up the press in the future and see if whatever story they published is any good, because you will get access to the raw information. So part of this requires fundamental research that is necessary in order to actually just figure out what this whole field looks like. And this is especially in respect to the partners we are working in. We are entering a new field here, and these partners need to find out technically as well as legally what is possible and what is required for them in order to build a good solution with us. That requires sharing the knowledge. So whatever kind of knowledge we are building in this research process, legally and technically, is going to be shared. And it's not going to be just shared in our community, but we're actually going to share it with the rest of the world. So we will open up a knowledge database. That is something that at the moment is taking a lot of time. We're opening up a knowledge database that contains whatever kind of experiences we find during the research. And this will make sure that it's not just Openleaks that in the future will be able to address any kind of digital whistleblowing. And it's not just going to be WikiLeaks either, but it's going to be other projects that can profit from this knowledge. So I don't know how many dozen leaking platforms are underway to be established, from global leaks to green leaks, or actually 2 different green leaks that we can see today. There's Brussels leaks and Indo leaks, and there's the Transparency Unit and Al Jazeera, and lots of newspapers are thinking about this. And that's all a great thing. Because as with anything else in society, you don't just want one solution, do you? I mean, you would want to have the pick. You would want to have the choice to find the solution that you trust, that sounds good to you as a source, and then use that solution. And what has to be made sure is that these solutions actually work. And the only way to make sure they work is by sharing knowledge, and not just by gatekeeping that, by building up some kind of proprietary knowledge here, but by sharing that knowledge and making sure that everybody can do it correctly if they want it. So the second part is that we are building a toolbox, and I think I have to speed up a bit. We're building a toolbox, and the first part of that is a secure document submission system. This document submission system is what we all know as a leaking platform today, and we're actually going to build multiple of these because we're going to adapt this flexibly to the needs of the partners. So every partner that is working with us will get their own leaking platform, so to say. It will have their CI, it will have their branding, it will have, input boxes where the partners can ask for information from the source according to what they think should be asked. So it's going to be fully customized to what a media partner or an NGO would want to know. And probably Greenpeace might ask you completely different things than let's say, a media organization would. So the requirements for these organizations are completely different. And you have to offer them the possibility to customize the front end they are offering to sources. Secondly, we're offering, as I have mentioned before, synergy effects in the system, because it will be so dynamic that documents are shared within the system. And that makes sure that you can, first of all, get exclusive documents, but you can also, after time, get access to information that was submitted to other partners originally. So there's a benefit for someone that usually wants exclusivity only, that doesn't want to cooperate. There now is a benefit to cooperate in a community and not just to build, for everybody to build their own solutions. All of that is decided on by the source. This is something that is very important on us because we are trying to give as much power back to the source as possible. The source can select what media should get the document first, and the source will be able to say how long that document should remain exclusively with that media organization or with that NGO. So they get a lot of power in the flow of the process in our system. We're also offering tools for secure document screening, verification, and analysis. This is an environment that we are working on that the partners can use to access the documents sent in, to read them, to do research, and also to write up analysis, as well as to collaborate. So the partners in our system will be able to get in touch with each other. So if they find out it's a document that has international relevance, they can talk to other partners from other countries. If they find out it's a document that is pertaining to a very specific area, to a very specific field of society where they don't have some specialists, they can get in touch with, let's say, an NGO that knows about this area. So we want people to be able to team up to build a robust network that can actually work on things together. And this will mean basically that we are building 2 types of users in our system, and one is a read-write user, and that is a partner that can receive documents and can also then decide to publish these documents. And these are, let's say, the regular partners we are working with. But as we don't want to keep everybody else out of the loop either, we are building what we call read-only access. And this means that other entities, and that can be bloggers or citizen journalists or other organizations as well, that you can get access to this pool of information. So if your interest is just to make sure that interesting documents are being published, you can just get read access to the pool of documents and can make sure that you help in distributing that information, and that you can make sure, as an independent control mechanism, that nothing remains unpublished that should be published. So again, we're not locking anybody out. We're not building some super exclusive community here, but we are actually trying to build something that is as open as possible. So the essence of what we are aiming at is that we will enable anonymous sources to submit information to about 100 different organizations. That is, let's say, the scalability, well, the maximum scalability that we can see today is about 100 organizations. Maybe when we're going on with development, this turns out to be wrong and it has to be corrected upwards or downwards, but at the moment this is what it looks like. And we are aiming at a 50-50 split between NGOs and media partners. So again, it is not a solution that is going to be built for exclusive media only for all the big players or whatever, as it has been understood, but it's rather a solution that is trying to find a very strict balance between NGOs that are strictly working in the interest of, in non-commercial interests, and media entities that might have some commercial interests. And it's going to be a good balance, I guess. So these organizations have experiences and resources to deal with documents. Again, that is very important because else you will never get the proper context and you will never be able to carry these documents into the hearts of society. And the dynamics of our system will make sure that the information cannot be withheld by particular interests. This again is due to the flow of information in our system. It will always see the light. The document flow and distribution can be defined by the source, and the information, because of that, will get very closely to where people care for this particular kind of information. So you as a source, you can pick your local newspaper or a regional newspaper because you know a certain story would matter to them. And if you know about an environmental scandal, you can go to Greenpeace because you feel like Greenpeace would be the ones to address it. And this is how to get information to someone that actually cares for it in the first place. So, how do we get there? This is split it up in three parts. So we have an organizational angle here that I'd like to talk about, a technical angle and a financial angle. In respect to the organization, we're teaming up. So we are at the moment launching our alpha stage, hopefully soon, with the first 6 partners that we are working on. And as soon as that is done, we are going to get in touch with everybody else that has contacted us in the meantime that wants to become a partner, and there are tons of organizations. So please don't feel ignored if you have received any, if you have not received any reply. We're working on this whole thing step by step, and we want to finish the alpha phase, go live, make sure that you all see something's actually happening before we start discussing the next phase, discussing negotiations with new partners and that stuff. It takes a lot of time. This is the biggest problem that we have. Secondly, the public. So all of you will have a say in the final compilation of our partners. We're not going to select these 100 organizations just all by ourselves, but actually we're trying to make a public vote because we want to work with organizations that all of you trust, that the people that have information trust. So we want to establish some kind of voting mechanisms where about 50% of the organizations we work with can be determined by a public vote, where you can suggest saying, look, this is a good organization working on corruption or anti-corruption in a small town, or this is a good nationwide initiative protecting whistleblowers or whatever. So please let this organization come aboard, and they will be up for vote, and if enough people vote for them, we will find, let's say, a consensual way to work this out. In respect to technical development, the implementation of the submission system naturally is the first step. This is something that has been more or less completed, so there's only detail that has to be figured out here. That system then has to be adapted to partners, and this is partly what is taking some time at the moment because it all needs to be coordinated. We're also implementing tools, as I said before, to access these kind of documents, in a, let's say, secure research environment that we are providing, and also to have the ability to work with them as needed. And that is just to look at them in the same way as it is to maybe discuss a particular document with other partners, be able to provide feedback to a document, also maybe to be able to do redactions on a particular document if there are names of people that should not be published. So this is just a practical example of what has to be considered as well. We're building anonymity mechanisms for sources, so there's a lot of technical development going on to strengthen anonymity for the sources we are working with. And that is while maximizing the accountability and transparency in the way that partners are working with that material. So we want to make sure that if something goes wrong in the system, not with one of the sources, but in the system and in the process of carefully and responsibly handling information, if something goes wrong there, that we actually have the possibilities to see what has happened and to find out if somebody has done something malicious. So we are building some kind of transparency and accountability mechanisms within our systems to make sure that the partners, especially the media we are working with, are working thoroughly and responsibly, and not just maybe irresponsibly because they don't invest enough time, or it's cheaper not to do so, or something similar. Financially, this whole thing is going slowly, step by step, and this is very important for us because we actually found out that it doesn't help you if you have a lot of money and if you're still stuck in a project that doesn't go forward. So we are at the moment more focusing on moving forward than on raising funds. We're not taking any money from partners, but we are taking resources. And that is much more efficient than establishing some kind of money flow and then justifying what you spend it on. It's much easier, it's much more transparent, and it's much more efficient. We also can accept donations, so we have a Flatter button. Peter is going to talk about awesome Flatter in a minute anyway, so whoever doesn't know what that is will find out soon. If Peter can't explain it to you, I think he has some third-party resource that can try explaining it to you, but you'll see in a second. And we're going to offer some other methods for donations as well. This goes with all the organizational development, so we need some time to build all of this out, and in the same way that our organization grows, we are going to offer more possibilities to support us. Yes, at this stage, thanks a lot for about 600 euros that people have flattered us already. So we were kind of shocked seeing this, or let's say positively, really positively surprised, because we hadn't actually asked for anything at all. We just had this Flatter button, and it seems like at least a few people have been helping us out. So thanks a lot for that. It was really helpful in acquiring some of the hardware we need, and helps not to have to invest too much of the private money at the moment. Yes, we're working on something called fellowships, or however you would want to put that. So we're looking to establish mechanisms how people can more directly fund particular parts of our operation. So you can, I don't know, adopt an OL staffer, or you can adopt a server or whatever. So we're looking at different models of how you can very directly support a particular angle of the project, making this very transparent and leaving it up to you what kind of angle you would like to support. And then there's has been much talk about this already. There's going to be a foundation for the much bigger picture. That's something we're working on here in Germany. I hope that's going to happen sometime towards summer. So we would like to create an NGO, a lobby organization that is representing the people's voice in this whole transparency debate. And this is something I think that is very important, because we as citizens, we will have to have a voice in how this whole topic, or these issues around transparency and about secrecy, and the right for secrecy as well as the right to spill a secret. We as a people, we will have to have a say in that, because else that debate is going to develop not in the way that it is beneficial for us. So such a foundation could also help to fund various transparency-related projects, and that might also include our project. Yeah, so to the status. What is it, where are we at the moment, and why is it taking so long, and why do we start to look like vaporware, as a couple of people are saying? So we are busy, that's basically the point, and we are basically so busy that we even haven't managed to finish a couple of blog posts. So I started 3 blog posts alone that on topics that I thought should be covered, where we thought we'd give you all an update on our blog, and they're just not finished because, first of all, I keep going from conference to conference, and it's a really hard decision to say I'm missing a certain opportunity to explain to people what it is that we are doing. I could have said that republica is not as important, so I'd rather finish writing a blog post, but I think this is the wrong approach. It is very important as well to make all of you understand what it is that we are doing. So I'm here and not writing a blog post or finishing up one of our specification documents for the partners or whatever. And I hope you don't really mind. So please give us some more time. We are working on this, and it requires a lot of research. It requires building a proper fundament for this whole thing. We are not a hotshot kind of project that is supposed to run tomorrow and then run for half a year, become incredibly famous, and then not function anymore. But we are actually trying to build a solution that's sustainable. So it is not about putting online a submission system where all of you can see, oh, now finally there's another possibility again where everybody can leak material, and then people start to leak material and it's going to be published, but tomorrow you're not going to talk about it again. I mean, just look at, in the last year, just look at what happened. All of these publications have created such a big hype. They've created such a hype, and they were in the news for days or weeks, but nothing really has happened as a long-term kind of effect. So we need to find, and these are world record kind of publications. How do you make sure that the small stuff doesn't drown? That actually something happens out of that small stuff. And this requires a fundament. It requires more than just a submission platform. So it is about putting this all on a solid fundament, and that requires time. The technical development of all of that is progressing fast. As I said, the whole submission part, for example, is almost finished. The spool browser, so this working environment that we are going to offer to the media and the NGO partners we are working with, this is at a good stage as well. This is where we require more feedback, and this just takes time to do it properly and to make sure that you are actually communicating with those people that should use it. So the submission system as well as the spool browser are partly finished and about ready for the first tests in the alpha phase. So I hope within the next weeks we can finally see that happen and go in public in a way that you can see it happen and not just me. That coordination, as I said, takes time. And yeah, we are building out the resources to address these issues as well. So I have realized, or we all have realized a few weeks ago, that I personally, for example, am a bottleneck. So I'm trying to get rid of my own bottleneck by distributing whatever responsibilities I have to more people. That as well takes some time, and it's just part of building a project. Whoever of you has ever built a project, started something, might know that these are typical problems. So I hope you will understand that and show some sympathy. Yeah, so that was basically the introduction. As it was written in a newspaper in 2012, it took as long as it took, and it was worth waiting. So I hope you all agree to that. And thanks for the interest in our work. Thanks for listening here, and we're looking forward to be working with all of you, hopefully very soon. There's some contact information, and whoever else has more questions, I hope I haven't confused more than I have explained. Let me know, I'm around afterwards. So thanks a lot, and I'll hand over to Peter in a minute then.
Vielen Dank. Daniel Domscheit-Berg hier im Friedrichstadtpalast. Ja, mal sehen, ne? Wir haben es vorhin schon ganz kurz angesprochen. Mal sehen, über was er dann im nächsten Jahr redet.